We are back with another episode of 9 to 5 Faith. Today, I sit down with single mom Jaime to discuss her journey of faith, finding identity after raising her kids, and balancing a busy career with her walk with Jesus. Jaime shares some powerful insights on surrender and boundaries and the importance of daily time with God. I know you're going to be getting a lot out of our conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
And
Thank
I just
you.
noticed we're like coordinating with the Navy. I know it's hard to see on camera, but this is Navy too. So you got the whole like ring light situation going, and I'm committing the ultimate sin for all videographers, and I'm backlit at this moment, but we're just going to roll with it. So it kind of looks black. I'm so happy to have you here and also to hear your story, you guys. I am so pumped because Jaime is coming to us in a really fun, funky season of life. So tell us a little about yourself and let's get rolling.
All right. Well, you want to know my age, really?
No.
All right.
For some of the other people, it's like super relevant. I had this guy on here and he was like, put that he was 20 in like the questions, but like, I was like, was that a typo? He didn't act 20 years old. I'm like, you can't go into a bar, but like, yeah, you're like dropping these truths like nobody's business. Anyways, which is why I like to ask the lay of the land more. So like, where in life are you?
Okay.
Kids, husband, all that good stuff.
All right. Well, I am a single mom and my kids are in their 20s. Let's just leave it there.
Okay. Yeah.
So my kids are in their 20s. I have 4 kids. I raised them, and from being single, I went to nursing school when my kids were 7 months old to 5.5. And I really took off in my career, and I'm still in my career. But I'm getting a growing passion of helping single moms defeat. And that's what you're talking about is really being in this transition phase. And so I'm excited to talk about this because, wow, it's a lot when you're trying to grow in faith, start a business, still be a mom, take care of your health and work.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And I don't even have the mom element of it, and I'm struggling. And again, I'm not by myself on that. So like I'm really, but I was just thinking I'm going to therapy after this. Everyone should go to therapy in my opinion. And it's just like going to the gym. And I was thinking, I was like, I need to talk to my therapist about how many things I have on my plate right now.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah. So are you an empty nester now or?
No. Well, I lied.
Nester.
I have a 19-year-old that's still
okay.
Home. He's not quite 20, but he's still home with me, but he's not here. You know how that is. Well, you don't know how that is, but he has his own life. He's working, he's out of the house. I see him at night. Good night, I love you. I see him in the morning. Good morning, I love you. Have a great day. And kind of passing. But
also like that's a huge transition moment for you in your life. You said 3 kids or 4 kids?
4
kids. 4. So like going from a household of 5 to a household of 1 in, the course of a few years, that's crazy.
Oh, girl, we could do a whole podcast on just that alone. I mean, no joke. We could do a podcast on just that, the emotions that go with kids leaving and being a single mom. My whole world was wrapped around my kids. And, I built my career. I realized I built my entire career around my kids because I didn't want the stigmatism of being a single mom and, being a statistic and having to rely on other people financially for forever. And so I put everything into my career, and I kind of had oh no, what am I going to do now moment when my kids were grown, because I'd put everything into them that when they left, it was like, who am I? Who am I as a woman? Who am I who am I as a woman? I mean, it wasn't even as a mom anymore, and I'm still a mom, but that relationship has changed. I need to have my own interests and my own things. And that's really where I have a passion for helping other people. And that's kind of where this defeating defeat for single moms is kind of bred out of, and passions bred out of, because I mean, you could write books on some of the things that we have gone through. And I realized, being single, and not even just being single, like so many people struggle with identity.
Yeah.
And who are you really? And imposter syndrome and things like that. And so, I was like, man, I would love to sit with someone like me 15, 20 years ago that maybe could have helped me with some of decisions and things like that, and steered my course a little bit, made it so it wasn't so, up, way down.
Yeah.
Struggle to get up, go way down, kind of sawtooth more instead of rolling hill events.
I like that. I'm going to use that. I've never really go for rolling hills, not sawteeth. But you hit the nail on the head. I was actually while you were talking through these things, I was like, I just hear this glaring word of identity. And not only, I can't really relate not being a mom, but I would assume, and from what you're saying, you've had this similar experience of you're just building your life around your kids. And same with that, I find with people in careers of you build your life around these bits and pieces so much that when it's not there, when it's taken away, when you go to a new season of life, when God calls you to something else, you're stuck in this between a rock and a hard place of trying to discover who you are to your core.
Yeah. So you just reminded me of something. So I was in more of the traditional personal development realm about 5 years ago. And again, this is a whole podcast on its own. But what I wanted to tell you in this is I took a leap of faith and stopped my career and went full in on coaching. And I didn't expect the freight train that came after that, because, at that point I had two of my kids out of the house. So my oldest two were already gone. My daughter was having struggles and whatnot. And I knew her struggles were directly related to choices and things that I had done in my past. And so to see that come to fruition through my daughter was difficult. I didn't know who I was, and I also let go of my career. Now, granted, I only did it for 3 months because life, but I can't tell you how empty I felt when I didn't build up my identity over those years. I put everything into my career to support my kids. And so when you took that all away, I was like, wow, what do I have left to work with?
Yeah. Now take me through, we'll get to the career element in a moment, but I also like to talk about give me a lay of the land of your career and your walk of Jesus with Jesus, and kind of where have those two always kind of been, parallel trains running next to each other, or did your walk of Jesus with Jesus fall later on when you were in the midst and throes of your career or what have you?
Such a great question. Through all of my years, I always knew God gave me my jobs. There was no questions that God guided my steps, that he was looking out for me. He was looking out for my kids. That being said, I was afraid of him. I thought he was a judgmental God. I thought I had a fear, and not a fear of God in the righteous way, a fear of God in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so because I felt broken, I went into secular, traditional means of healing. And I constantly was looking for something to fill the hole that was within me. I mean, I had a realization for most of those years that I was broken. It kind of it came to a head when I told you I stopped my job and the kids were moving out and whatnot. And that all came to a head of, oh my goodness, I really am broken and I really don't know what I'm going to do. And is this really what life is going to be? I'm just going to be in bed depressed the rest of my life. Is that really what this is going to look like? And I realized with the secular means of healing and whatnot, I felt like an onion. I felt like I would heal a layer, but then the next one would be deeper, darker, and harder. And then I would heal another layer, and then it would just be deeper, darker, and harder. And I'm like, I remember just feeling like being in such a pit that I couldn't see the light of day. And then something I won't go into here, but there was a series of events that God started calling me to him. I was led through a nonprofit organization I was working with to do a Bible study. That Bible study led me to a church that led me to a pastor that walks with God, has a relationship with Jesus, and spoke to me. And I saw in that conversation, God sees me. He loves me. God sees me. God sees me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that I surrendered. It was probably a few months, I want to say, but I got to where I hit my knees and I was like, God, my life is a mess. My weight is out to here. My finances are out to here. My life is out to here, and I have no idea how to fix it. I need you to meet me in my mess. And he did.
That's beautiful. And I wish, like, if I could show you without bumping the camera, like my feet were happy dancing underneath my desk, because you hit on something. And I mean, I didn't even share this with you. I've just been mulling it over. But this idea of like healing and the different layers of healing. And I was reading something, because right now I'm doing, for like the autumn, I'm doing a series on like occult and new age practices. And I've been reading a lot of kind of testimonies of people who have come out of that and found Jesus and restoration and true healing through that. And one of the gals, she was writing that she was always chasing the next healing.
Yep.
And what you were saying, I was like, oh, like, yes, that's it. Exactly. And it's true, because like nothing can actually like penetrate the core, but I've actually never considered that before I had read that. And then with you saying it as well.
To do the actual healing that I needed to do that came after that surrender, I needed Jesus, because the memories were so painful that without doing it in a proper way, and meeting Jesus there, Jesus is like, I remember my pastor telling me, walking with Jesus is like having the pain medicine, an IV pain bag. It helps numb everything. You still remember things and whatnot, but the pain of it, the emotions of it's not there.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, without going too deep into the healing and what happened, the event, it was likened to when Moses put the staff in the bitter waters and they became, drinkable. That's kind of what this memory was like. Jesus put a staff in the bitter waters, and then I could see what happened, but more than seeing what happened and what the root cause was, that I would never let myself go to with secular training. I saw that because I did it in the right way and I did it with Jesus, I saw that every single one of my choices and things that have happened since then were all tied to that initial event. Like that truly was the root. And so that healing that portion undid everything else, and it helped me do massive amounts of, or get through massive amounts of shame and guilt that I had been holding on to, that were so deeply rooted.
Yeah.
And the secular healing kept me in that shame and the guilt and trying to heal the shame and the guilt. But as you know, if you don't pull a weed by its roots, it's just going to keep growing back. And so that's how the onion layers were happening.
Yeah.
I would get close to what I needed to see, but I couldn't see it because I needed to meet Jesus there, because they were just too painful.
Yeah. Isn't Jesus awesome?
Oh,
I love your testimony. It's absolutely beautiful. Um, okay, let's shift gears back to like a little bit of the podcast topic, but we will definitely hit on these bits and pieces again because I feel like that they're so tightly interwoven into each other. So can you tell us a little bit about your career journey in the midst of your walk with Christ, and what do you do? You know, what have you done? All that good stuff.
so I my first degree is in fashion merchandising, which is hilarious.
I love
Hilarious.
it.
But when my kids were little, I saw that I had a gift of talking with people and I wanted to serve. And so when I was pregnant with my last child, I went to nursing school and put myself through nursing school when the kids were babies and
Which
became
is a really tough thing for people who are unfamiliar with the nursing school process.
it's not recommended to do it bass backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
and have kids. It's very difficult even, to just to do it the traditional way. Doing it
Right.
the non-traditional way is not recommended. Very difficult.
Yes.
So from there, I worked in the cardiothoracic OR. I was a cardiothoracic OR nurse at Duke. And a couple of years after being in the OR, they sought after nurses that were great at IT. And so I moved into the IT department. That job kind of fell in my lap. It wasn't it didn't just fall in. I know that it was God. I mean, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I recognized God was guiding me.
Yeah.
And so that career working in IT has grown. Now I am an architect I manage projects and whatnot that are coming into a hospital here out in California. And yeah.
Hot dang. That's like, I'm always amazed because when I think I have a good grasp of all the jobs that are out there, I would never consider, but it is true. I now that you say it, I get it and I see where it's going.
Right. I always thought I didn't even put the ideas of who puts behind the thoughts behind the charting and, that the machines that are working all need interfaces and all of that. And so I'm the person that designs those workflows now. So we have a company that comes in. I'm like, okay, so what's the workflow going to be? Who do we need to have involved? And it's all the way from
You're like the subject matter expert liaison for
Yes.
the technology nerds out there.
Right. But yes. And but I'm the bridge between all of the technology side, but also the clinicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm still a registered nurse. And so I still understand, I have that vantage point that I understand why they need this who's what's it thing.
Yeah. When I worked at a tech company, we would have like our email guys there and they were super technical because I mean, I know email looks very straightforward from our side of things. You guys, the back end of email stuff, it is another beast. And they would come to us of like, because we were the comms team and they were like, we need to put out communications about this. And I was like, okay, but tell it to me like a human. I was like, I get that you guys are the subject matter experts, but tell me like so I can understand it. And I remember one time, this is a peek behind the curtain. So pretty much they would say all these things like, oh, there's a feature flag. There's a feature flag. All the tech guys in the product. They're like, there's a feature flag. And I'm like, what is a feature flag? And they're like, oh, it's just a marker that the feature is there. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, then why does it need a name?
Why isn't it just called a marker?
Yeah, like why is it a feature flag? I just remember that so distinctly. I was so confused for the longest time. I was like, I'm gonna have to ask the dumb questions, but I absolutely get the need and purpose for what you do, and that is amazing.
Oh, it's fun. It's stressful,
Yeah,
but it's fun.
Yeah. So do you have like a busy season? Is that a thing for
We are
healthcare?
opening. Yeah. Oh, is there? Yes, yes. Is there such a thing? Yes. So we are
Any
opening.
outbreak?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
No, we are opening new locations, and so we're
Okay.
opening new hospitals. We're wanting to upgrade our current EMR, electronic health record,
There you go.
electronic medical record. I can't speak in acronyms. You got to
I
remind
will
me.
ask you. Don't worry.
Um, so we have multiple projects going on. So it's just I am pulled in 15 different directions with my job right now. It's
Yeah.
really crazy.
Yeah. So talk me through a little bit about managing all of that as well as kiddos and your walk with Jesus. And also, like, if you don't mind talking a little bit about singleness and all of that as well, if you don't mind. If
No,
you
I
do,
don't
just
mind.
skip
I
over
don't
it.
mind at all. Open book. Open book. Um, so I have found that I need to win the day. So if I get up early and I have my quiet time with God, I do my Bible study, I do my journaling and writing, and if I really do that first, well, and make my bed. I saw this thing about Air Force commander, if you make your bed every day, then at least you won something.
Yeah.
And I kind of took that philosophy and expanded on it, because if there's certain things that I do in a day, it doesn't really matter what happens the rest of the day. I still feel like I won.
Mm.
Um, so I really see that I do so much better if I get up and I win the day, so to speak, than if I let my emotions run me or whatever, and I get up and I'm tired and whatnot. Then I kind of have that attitude through the day.
Yeah.
Really being in the word grounds me. It really one of my favorite scriptures is, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and all else will be added unto you.
Mm.
And I've taken that to heart, that if you seek ye first the kingdom, then everything else is going to kind of work out. And
Yeah.
so it's funny because I get really frustrated. I'm pretty insightful in things that are happening in my life, and I get so frustrated if I'm not doing the things that I know that I need to do, because my stress level goes way up. Then I'm carrying everything on my shoulders, and I get into the stress of the day, and I can't tell you how many times a day. Then I'm like, oh my goodness, you won't believe this. And oh my goodness, you won't believe that. And I grumble and complain a lot more because the stress is like, up here in my
Yeah.
job. But if I'm winning the day, then when things happen, I'm like, okay, so this is what's going on. And yeah, it's not cool, but what are we going to do about it? I have a different attitude. And then my relationship with my kids, the more that I have come into relationship with Jesus and really made that a priority, the better my relationships with my kids has been. I used to demand respect from them because I pay the bills. I'm doing all this for them, and blah, 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 blah. You guys should just clean house because that's the way it is. I'm gone all the time. We went from that to now I'm really interested in just taking the example that God has given me, just loving me through everything, regardless of what I am doing, trying to impose that on my kids, loving them regardless of what they are doing and listening to them. And in doing that, now we have a totally different relationship than we ever had before. And it's so much easier.
Yeah. You even hit on something earlier that I like want to bring back now and I don't even know if you like intentionally said it this way, but it stuck out to me of when you had that kind of 3-month period, where you had left your job at the time, and then your daughter kind of, you said, reacted badly to previous decisions you had made. Like, I feel like that level of insight is only like, that's a Jesus insight. Like I have found that I follow this one gal on Instagram, and she had just posted of like how she lost her temper and yelled at her kids, and then she like went and had apologized to her kids for it. I remember reading that and I was like, what? Like, she's a parent and she apologized to her kids, and like recognizing like that moment of humanity. That wasn't my experience growing up. And recognizing that moment of humanity and kind of her journey with that. And when you were talking too, that same thing stuck out to me of like recognizing our own humanity and our own pitfalls. I think that's only really found in like Christian households, because you just have this different, I guess you say like more humility when it comes to like parenting and like raising little humans.
You know, and it's one of the things that I want to point out from that is expand on that a little bit is God was always with me, even though I was afraid of him. So looking back, moments like that, having the insights that I've had, you know, understanding what my role in my kids' journey has been, that all came from God. So he never left me or forsake me, even though I was afraid and hid. And that blows my mind. You know, through that whole journey, I see him and I realized that it was my actions that was saying, no, I'm afraid of you and I don't understand you, so I'm pushing you away.
Yeah. I was just pulling up a Bible verse that I was reading and kind of writing on today. And it was all about the crucifixion. And I was writing about how when the most significant point to me, I mean, they're all significant, but when Jesus was killed and crucified and then raised from the dead, the part for me that always stands out is the veil being torn. Mm-hmm. And that moment in scripture, it was Matthew 27 was kind of what I was studying. But also it is accounted for in all the other gospels as well. But the veil being torn is so significant to me, because then we don't have to fear God with what we approach him with.
Yeah.
And also like I don't know, I want to say like mysticism, but like rather like the mystery of the veil being torn.
Yeah.
Some scholars believe it was 3 to 6 feet thick.
Yeah.
Like it was not a piece of paper, guys. Like it was like, think of how tall you are and lay down, and that's how thick, not wide, not tall, thick the veil was. And it was just torn. And I was just really meditating on this idea of just like all of that space that separated us no longer has to be there, and we can approach Jesus with our mess, and that is a really cool thing.
And when I understood that is when I surrendered. It wasn't until I understood the relationship with Jesus, that I hit my knees. So, I mean, it is now looking back, I can articulate he was always there. He never left me, but I couldn't see it at the time, other than saying I knew God was leading me, and I love God. I had such a love for him, and I have since I was a kid. But once I realized that I could be in relationship with Jesus and he sees me and has an interest in me, and he loves me, that's when I surrendered and was like, I know you can. I can't heal this mess.
Yeah. And that it's like, you keep saying surrender, but ultimately that's what it is just like this complete surrender over to God. And like, I think, when we're like, oh, you invite Jesus into your heart, but like that's colloquial, but like if we actually just want to say it, like it is a pure and like ugly surrender, messy surrender to God.
My pastor says all of the time, they have police backgrounds, and she said, if you think of a person that's being arrested, you tell them they're told to lay down flat on the ground, arms out. You have no power to do anything. And so when I talk about surrender, that's the position I'm seeing, is like on the ground, where you can't run, you can't pick anything up, you have no power at that point. And that's the complete surrender that I am constantly looking for. Now, I can't say once I surrendered, I haven't, I've tried to take control back in certain things and whatnot, but for the most part, it's been a journey now of being an infant at that stage, right? At the moment of surrender, being an infant spiritually, and now growing in maturity and seeing how that relationship is changing. The more that I get deeper into this relationship and the more that I am walking, how that surrender keeps, it's not that it changes, but it gets deeper, if that's a good way to
explain. I'm following. Yeah, for sure. And I think too, it's like you uncover areas of your life that you didn't know you were holding on to.
Yes.
And so the surrender gets deeper as your awareness grows of your sinfulness and like your brokenness.
And that's where I'm at, where I was telling you the day to day. I'm seeing each individual choice almost isolated in, yes, this is leading me towards Christ, or I'm really choosing not to really walk with him in what I'm doing right this minute, whether it be TV show or whatever. Or the way that I'm eating or whatnot. And so I'm seeing those individual choices, which is kind of crazy. But I am excited because I know it's preparation for something different. Stepping into that space of helping single moms defeat.
Yeah. That's so good. So good. And I also think like when you're talking about like, the cop arresting a suspect and they're on the ground and their face. And I also think of, I heard it put one time, especially around like our physical posture when we're worshiping. And like, I know like you can make fun of like people having their hands in the air in different respects of like height and all that stuff. But like, if you think through, like soldiers in war, and like, if there's like a battle going on, what do you see when they surrender? They put their hands up. And so like us putting our hands up is not, it's not some, magic trick that's going to get us, closer to God, but it is like a physical act of that surrender. I also appreciate people who are like, I pray on my knees. I'm like, my knees are about 40 years older than I am, so I can't do that. But more power to you.
I pray wherever I am at, up, down.
Yes. Yeah. I'm
all
like,
different positions.
Because here's my deal with prayer. If I'm uncomfortable, I'm not thinking about my prayer. I'm thinking about how uncomfortable I am.
The needs of the flesh, right?
Right. Like if I'm on my knees and I'm thinking like, oh, there's like a carpet staple that's sticking me or something like that. Or like, oh, my leg's cramping. Like it's going to take me out of there real fast. Not today, Satan.
Yeah. And that's funny though, but I've learned that it's not the posture that you're in when you pray. It's just you're talking to God.
Yeah.
And, the Bible tells us to talk to him all the time, pray without ceasing all day long. That means in everything. So you don't have to be in a certain position or whatnot to pray.
Yeah. And I find too, I feel, and this is something I'm personally kind of getting over. And I've really just been diving into prayer lately, of just like really going to God about everything. And it feels silly, but also when I'm like, if I'm at a sticking point with my work, I am praying about it. Like, God, I don't know the answer to this. What's the answer to this? I don't know what this is supposed to look like. And, just again, it's just that heart posture of like, not only does he like, are we asked to go to him in everything, but he wants us to.
Right. Right.
That's awesome too. Man, just
See,
feeling
and
all the Jesus feels today.
I asked that in my very political job. How
Mm-hmm.
can I be a good steward in this space?
Yeah. And by political, do you mean I think I know what you mean. Just in terms of like playing politics in your role, or are you talking about more so things that are combating like your morality?
Um, it could be a little bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
truly, I mean,
Yeah.
there's things going on at my job that are just, I mean, you're just like, really?
Yeah.
Really? And having to navigate in that and not, not get into, for lack of better terms, get into the cussing and
Yeah.
the fight of it all, and staying in a posture of it is what it is, and how can I be the best example through this.
Mm.
um that's really how my spiritual, because there's been change of leadership, and with change of leadership there's change of reorgs and things like that happen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's a brutally tough situation, because we have all this going along on with increased amounts of work. I mean, a lot of us are working double
Yeah.
because of the new hospital. I mean, we have our day-to-day stuff, we have our upgrades and things like that we need to be preparing for, and keeping the lights on at one hospital, and now we're opening 3 new buildings. And so, I mean, that's a full-time job in itself, and they didn't hire all new staff to do that work.
Right.
And so it has really, really, really been a challenge in this season of transition, and even I think doubly difficult for me, because I half of my mind is on my business and half of my mind is on my job.
Yeah.
And so, and my job is in turmoil and a lot of stress, and then my business is straight kingdom. And so it is like two polar opposites. And that's what I'm saying. For a period of time through this, I got into the stress of it all, going, oh my word, this is heavy and crazy and hard. And then I realized I can't give that kind of effort to work. And I'm not meaning that I shouldn't show up and do my best. I'm meaning I can't give them stress, because if I was hit by a bus, the likelihood that they would hire somebody else tomorrow to replace my job is, 100%. Right.
Right.
So I can't be a martyr to the job. I need to show up and do my best, but I also need to take care of myself, my house, and not give them my health and everything else that goes with it, and get lost in that career space. And that's been one of the biggest challenges since I have surrendered to Jesus, is having that understanding of I matter too, and not just the work that needs to get done.
Yeah. I saw a lot of it, especially or like a lot of conversation around, I like how you put it, the martyrdom around it, with like the quiet quitting movement. And like, again, I'm practically Switzerland in a lot of this stuff, where I'm like, I get both sides. I'm neutral, where I'm like, yes, like there's the work hard, but there's also the like, we're not going to kill ourselves over this job, because it's just a job at the end of the day. So I definitely get both sides, but I do like how you put it, of like, this job, it's asking me to sacrifice pieces of myself I'm not willing to give. So how for yourself do you maintain and or establish those boundaries between your work and everything else that you have going in life?
applying the word, really being in the Bible. So um, I heard a couple people say that if you're having a hard time reading the Bible every day, just read a proverb. Just read a proverb a day. And so for the last couple months, I really have been doing that, just reading a proverb. And I started reading it in different versions and whatnot. So I'm not just reading the same thing over and over and over again. I'm trying to get a deeper understanding. And the proverbs are talking about wisdom. And so, wisdom can be applied, but you still show up, you still do your best, but you have that boundary. When you have understanding of what's really happening, then you have a personal boundary of, this is a line I won't cross. This is just the line I won't cross because it's not worth it.
And I think too, at least I hear in the Christian spaces, and tell me if you've kind of experienced this too, of just this, again, this self-martyrdom of like, I'm going to push myself until I'm dead, whether it be volunteering or with ministry or what have you, or even just like in how we like approach good works or what have you. But I think too, like we see very distinct examples of both God and Jesus, God the Father and Jesus. And I can't think of the Holy Spirit off the top of my head, but I'm sure there is one, drawing boundaries in their life of, when God created the world, he took a day off. And when Jesus, needed to reconnect, he went into, the desert, he went into the garden to pray, he went away. And so even they had their own boundaries. And I feel like there is that wisdom with it. I had a friend text me a few weeks ago, and she was struggling with the idea of like, specifically giving to beggars on the street. Like that was specifically what she was asking about. And she was like, how do you see this in terms of like scripture? And she pulled probably a proverb or something of, just giving everything or like giving, to those who you see who's in need. And she was like, okay, like, how do you kind of like, what do you see in this? And I just told her, I said, like, I think, yes, like that is what we are called to do ultimately. But I also think we have discernment and wisdom along with it.
Yep.
And so, I think that is our job to act with discernment and wisdom and be led by the Holy Spirit in situations like that, but also with our boundary setting.
And one of the other things is the true gift of Jesus is that we get to live. He pulls you out of that spiritual death and brings you into life of connection. And that's truly living. And truly living, you have boundaries because you as yourself matter. Being a martyr isn't in that, forgive me, but it's not in that Christian space because you're going beyond yourself, giving what you don't have. You've got to fill your cup, and what's overflowing, you can give to others. And so, I like that. Yeah, you're bypassing the true gift of Jesus and staying more in that spiritual death when you're getting into martyrdom and whatnot. Yeah.
And it's also, I think, not selfish in that you're doing it self-servingly, but I would say selfish in the fact that you think that you can do it on your own.
Yes.
Without refueling with Jesus and without appropriate boundaries.
But isn't that the great deception, right? Yeah. So the biggest lie that Satan uses is that we can do it on our own. I mean, this is my soapbox, but traditional personal development takes Jesus and the Holy Spirit out of it and preaches that it's all on your own. If you change your thinking, if you are just driven and you can get your mindset right and you do these things, you're going to be successful. I am doing faith-based coaching because with Jesus, all things are possible, but that's the whole truth. And that's all of it. And it takes it takes the burden off. You're yoked together with Jesus, and he says that his burden is easy. I mean, his yoke is easy and the burden is light. And so, yeah, when you are adding Jesus and the Holy Spirit into your practice and whatnot, you move from having to do it on your own, martyrdom, into understanding that you can't do it on your own. There's no way possible. And then you naturally have boundaries. And that's where the wisdom and understanding, the wisdom comes in and the understanding is gained.
I love it. Absolutely beautiful. Jaime, I always ask this question at the end of the show of what is one faith-based discipline or practice that someone can do to help them grow closer in their walk with Jesus and maybe surrender a little bit more?
Well, I already kind of mentioned it. If you're having a hard time reading the Bible every day, read Proverbs. And then I actually heard a thing from Andrew Womack today. Picture it. Meditating isn't this just sitting and getting into this, space. It's meditate on the word. Meditate. What does it mean? What do the words coming off of the page? What is God trying to tell you? And then, as you're reading and you're getting that obedience, you'll start getting more and more revelations.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me, Jaime. Where can people find you if they want to hear more about you, if they want to learn more about your coaching or defeating defeat? Is that what it was?
Yes, defeating defeat, one godly principle at a time. So I have some free victory cards. If you go to Jaime Ray, rootedinChristCC.com/victory. You can get those for free, and I'm happy to do one-on-one conversations. And really, I just want to help people move the needle and not have that sawtooth.
Rolling hills, not sawteeth.
Right. I don't want you to have a sawtooth of life. More rolling hills is it's the way it should be.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we'll link those below in the show notes as well as all your socials and anywhere else on the internet people can find you. But thank you so much for joining me, Jaime. This conversation has just been so beautiful. And so like just like at the end of this, just like, isn't Jesus the coolest?
Oh, he is the best. The best.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, hit those 5 stars, share with a friend, all that good stuff. And we will make sure to talk to you next week.